Our Lord Himself, in response to a question, said that the first and greatest commandment is what? To love God with all of your heart, mind, and soul. And then He said the second greatest command is what?
To love your neighbor as yourself.
To love your neighbor as yourself. Now, just looking at those two statements, what conclusion can we draw from that?
Love is more important than anything.
Sir?
Love is more important than anything.
Love is more important than anything else. That's right. Love is the ultimate. To God, everything starts with love. If you love Him and you love people, Jesus went on to say, matter of fact, if you get those two right, then what? Everything else follows. So just do that and everything else will take care of itself. You don't even have to worry about all the others because they'll be taken care of. Love is Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, I want to tell you the most excellent way. What is he saying? There's nothing higher. Love is where it's at. Love is all around us. When you listen to the radio, you hear song after song after song talking about love. Movies, TV programs, love, love, love. If we were to go out here on the street and question 150 people walking down the street, what is love? What would we get?
150 different.
What would people say, you think?
It's a feeling.
It's a feeling, yeah. It's a strong emotional feeling towards someone. If you ask someone, how do you fall out of love, what would they say?
Feelings stop.
Your feelings stop. Yeah. The idea in America is you fall in and out of love. You just suddenly have a strong feeling towards someone, and then you quit having that feeling and you fall out of love. If you look it up online, if you Google it, guess what the number one answer you get for what love is? Sex. What does that tell us about our culture?
We don't know what love is.
Priorities are weakness.
Our understanding of love might not be the same as God's. And so Paul is writing to the Corinthian church. The Corinthian church is made up of Greeks. The Greeks think they're the smartest people in the world. They're dedicated to logic and to philosophy and intelligence, and they led the world in mathematics and physics and philosophies and plays and art. And they thought they were the top of the drawer. And so Paul, after dealing with a whole bunch of problems that they had come up with in the church, says, okay guys, let me tell you now what the greatest is, what the ultimate is. It's love. The Greeks had everything except the right things. They had everything confused. And so Paul is trying to draw them back into the right way. And so he says, let me tell you about love. Now, as we mentioned last week, the word love translated here, every one of these, now there are 16 different statements. Love is, or love is not. In English, it doesn't come out this way, but in Greek, every one of them is a verb. And which tells us what? It's an action. Verbs are the action, are the words of our language. The verb tells you what the language, what's happening.
Love is what you do.
Love is what you do, not what you feel. And so Paul says, it's not about how you feel. Love is not about how you feel. Why? For one thing, feelings change. Some days we feel all warm and cozy and lovey-dovey, and then some days not so much. So from God's perspective, what's the only way to fall out of love? to stop doing the things of love. I've had people come into my office, married couples. I've done a lot of marriage counseling over 50 years. And several times they would say to me, well, we've fallen out of love. And I would have to explain to them, that just means you quit doing what love is. When you do the things of love, what happens to the feelings?
They come back.
They'll tend to be there. They'll tend to come. I have blown couples' minds. And I'll turn to a man and I'll say, do you love your wife? He says, well, yeah. And I'll say, I don't care. He said, what? I say, I'm going to teach you what it really means to love your wife. I say, obviously you don't love your wife, but I'm going to teach you how. And so we have to understand God has a different perspective on love than we do in our culture. Love is not some glorious feeling. Love is what you do. And so when God says, love your enemies, what's he not telling you?
Not like a good feeling.
You don't have to like him. You don't have to like your enemy. You don't have to feel all warm and cozy towards your enemy. What is God saying?
Do the right thing.
I have to treat him the right way. Exactly, yeah. I have to treat him with love. And so these things that Paul has listed for us give us the definition of true love. These are the things that you might start every one of these. If I love you, here is what I will do. He starts off with patience, and I don't think that's an accident. I think patience is where we all have to work hard. Because patience is the one that goes against our nature as much as any of the others. Now, when we use the word patient, we usually mean in the sense of waiting, or I don't get upset with you as you know, I take my time to get upset with you. The word literally means in Greek to choose not to hurt back. Do people hurt us? Yes. People are going to hurt you. I remember when I was in the first grade, people hurt me. Why is it I can remember things people did bad to me in the kindergarten, in first grade? I didn't have kindergarten, but first grade and third grade. But it's hard to remember other things. It's easy for us to remember when people have done mean things to us. Now, God says, if I love you and you hurt me, what will I do?
Not hurt back.
I will not hurt you back. That's what love is. I choose not to hurt back. What would happen to marriages if everybody did this?
They'd be glorious.
The divorce rate would drop to 0. You know? What would happen in our work relationships if we chose not to hurt people back? You know, what would happen in our friendships? What would happen in the world if we chose not to hurt back? Now, why is this hard?
Hurting back is like a coping mechanism. Like if I don't hurt back, then you might think that you can continue behaving that way.
Okay, all right. It's one of the ways we defend ourselves. Yeah. What did you say? It's human nature. If someone hurts you, your nature is to strike them back. It is hard for us not to do that. That's why Paul lists it first. And said, if I love you and you say something to hurt me, I will choose not to hurt you back. It sounds simple. Now, part of the problem is, what does our culture teach us?
Me, stand up for what I
I and self-centeredness.
Well, that too.
Have to pay people back.
Don't let anybody push you around. Don't let anybody take advantage of you. Don't let anybody run over you. What if Jesus had had that attitude? We'd be in bad shape. We'd all be lost. Yeah. So, patience, and you have to work on this. It doesn't come naturally. You have to understand it. If someone says something mean to you, if somebody says you're stupid or you're ugly or you're whatever, you just say, okay, I'm not going to respond to that. I'm not going to hurt back. If I love you, that's the way I will treat you. It then says, love is kind. This is one of those words, we all know exactly what it means. We know when people are kind. How would you define it?
Person makes you feel good.
That's one element of kindness.
I
But
think
what is kindness itself?
it's it's having that quality that you can help people feel safe around you and feel like they can safely communicate, they can safely be vulnerable with you.
Okay.
They can say, because that's when that real communication happens.
All right, getting real close.
If I had to define it, I'd say, where you going? I would say knowing somebody's needs or paying
All right.
attention to their.
You're getting really close to the biblical definition of kindness. What were you going to say? Okay, the actual word kind means to be useful. To be useful. Now, there are two kinds of kindness. There are kind words. What kind of words are useful? Encouraging?
Toby Mac's got a song called Speak Life. Great example of that.
Yeah.
Speaking
Yeah.
life into other people.
Okay. Encouraging words are kind, they're useful. What else? What other kind of words are kind?
Constructive.
Constructive, upbuilding, gentle. It's probably easier to go the other way. What kind of words are not kind? What kind of words are not helpful? Hurtful, angry, harsh, critical. And so Paul says, when you talk to people, talk to them kindly. Words that only help. He says in Ephesians, what kind of words should you use only? Words that build people up. If we could do that, imagine what would happen in our families if we never said things that were unhelpful. All right, there are also kind actions. Kind words and kind. What are useful actions?
Helping when somebody has a need.
Helping with somebody, yeah. If somebody needs some help, help them. That's what kindness is. Doing things that are useful to people. Paul says this is what true love actually is. Look for a way to be helpful. Look for a way to be useful to someone, either in word or in deed. And that's what, if I love you, I will look for ways to do that. The other night I went home and my wife had gone out and bought some chicken fried steak. And fried it up for me. That was very kind. She knows that that's my favorite meal. And that's kind, to be useful, to help people know what they like and do that. All right, if I love you, I do not envy you. What does envy mean?
You're jealous of what they have. You want, you want to have this, you want to have that kind of stuff.
Doesn't mean you wish they didn't have something.
Okay, the word, now it's closely related to the word jealousy. However, biblically speaking, it's a much more evil word. It's a worse word than jealous. What is jealousy?
Wanting what somebody else.
Wanting what somebody else has.
Envy is wanting them to also not have it.
Yes, envy says, I want what you got, but I wish you didn't have it. Now that's mean. Why do we envy others?
Because maybe they've hurt us before, and so that's our way
Sometimes.
of getting back.
Sometimes. Why else are we envious of people?
Selfish.
certainly. Actually, you could probably say every one of these goes back to selfishness one way or the other. Why do we envy people?
Well, it comes down to, we feel like they have something that we should have.
Yeah. You've got it. I should have
We've been
it.
cheated in some way.
We've been cheated out of something. Ma'am, it's not fair. That's right. Why is he so much better looking than I am? Why has he got more money than I've got? Why has he got a better job than I have? Why has he got a bigger house than I've got? You know, it's easy for us to be envious of people that have something we wish we had. Instead of being glad they've got it, we wish we had it instead. Envious says, I wish I had it and you didn't. I mean, it's kind of an ugly... And God says, if you love somebody, that's not the way you're going to feel toward them. How should you feel? Yeah, I'm glad you've got it. Yeah. If you got millions of dollars, I'm glad you got it. It's not wrong to think, okay, you've got this, I wish I had something like that. But it is wrong to think, I wish I had it and you didn't. I mean, that's
kind of the way society's going.
that's the way society is going very rapidly.
It should be equal.
Everything's got to be equal, yeah.
Whether you earn it.
Yeah, whether you earn it or not, yeah. Yeah, envy is an uglier, deeper form of jealousy, basically. All right. If I love you, I do not boast. What is boasting? Bragging. Why do we do that? Why do we brag?
Make us feel better and make them feel worse.
Theoretically, it makes me feel better if I brag and make people realize I've got something that's special. I never will forget. A good buddy of mine and me were playing golf, and we were in a tournament. And they put us with two other guys. And before we even teed off, one guy comes walking up barefooted, which was a little unusual on a golf course. There's sharp things. And he immediately began to tell us what a great golfer he was. He says, I have to have a specially designed head on my driver because I hit it so hard and so far I crushed the heads. He says, I can hit a 5-iron 250 yards. There are very few pros that can hit a 5-iron 250 yards. And he just bragged about everything he could do in golf. He could hit the ball further than anybody. He hit the ball straighter. Blah, 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 blah. After a few minutes of that, what do you think me and my friend were thinking?
He was really full of himself.
What a jerk. What a jerk. We started playing. And sure enough, he was telling the truth. He could hit a 5-iron 250 yards. He could hit a driver out of sight. But by then, what did we think? I didn't care. Now, what if he had never said a word and just started playing that way? Whoa! Boy, you must be the greatest golfer in the world. Bragging is a desire to make you think more highly of me. Now, it's not common in marriage. Why?
Because we know each other.
They know better. Doesn't do any good to brag to Sharon. She already knows the truth. But now, why does he say if you love somebody, you don't brag? What's that got to do with love?
Well, it can be irritating.
For one thing, it's very irritating. How many of us like a braggart? Nobody likes to be a... Ma'am?
I was married to one.
You was married to one. So you know
It was very
what...
hard. And one day I said, what do you want? Do you want me to put you on a pedestal?
Yeah.
He said yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And he
Okay.
meant it. I was like,
Okay. All
so
right.
yeah.
Nobody likes a braggart. And so it doesn't do any good for one thing. It's an effort to lift yourself above the other person. None of us like that. Some people just feel a need to lift themselves up and to make themselves look better, and nobody likes that.
When you boast, aren't you pretty much saying, I'm better than you?
Well, sure.
Is that like low self-esteem?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so God says, if you love somebody, you don't brag. Matter of fact, it's not necessary. If you can do it, you don't have to brag about it. They'll find out. There's just no upside to bragging. It just doesn't help that much. And so God says, if you love somebody, you want to be humble. You don't want to brag. You don't want to lift yourself up. You don't want to, be prideful and so on. All right, love is not proud. This is one of our greatest problems as human beings. What is pride? Yeah. That's true too.
Look what I did.
Okay. Pride is focused on me.
Self-pride.
There are basically two concepts in pride. One, pride refuses to admit error. It's hard for a prideful person to admit they're wrong. What does that do for love? Yeah, it just kills love. If I refuse to admit it when I'm wrong. And if I'm ever wrong, I will admit it.
Just haven't been yet, right?
Just haven't yet. But if I'm ever wrong, I'll admit it. The second element of pride, and this is one most folks don't think about, is pride demands its rights. Why does a man get mad because his shirt's not clean? I was going to wear that shirt and it's not clean. Why does he get mad?
Selfish thing.
Because like, yeah, it's right.
He had a right to have that shirt clean. We're raised as Americans to believe we have certain rights. Almost everything you hear in the news today, somebody's demanding their rights. We have gay rights and the LGBTQ people rights and abortion rights and all these rights. The problem is, where did we get the rights? Now, as an American citizen, you have certain rights. You have a right to vote, you have a right to fair jury, you have so forth. What rights does God give us? Think about it. In Scripture, what rights does God give you? Ma'am?
I think he gives us the right to accept him or reject him.
Yeah, the only right I can think of that God gives you is the right to accept him or reject him, but you're basically right. God doesn't really give us rights. What does he give us?
Freedom of choice.
Responsibilities. We have responsibilities. God doesn't go on and on about all your rights. When he talks to husbands and wives, where does he say you have certain rights in the marriage? He doesn't. He talks about your responsibilities. Now, as an American citizen, we are raised hearing every single day about all these rights that we get. And so we get angry. But where do we get those rights? We made them up. 99% of the rights people claim, they made up. They weren't given to you. They weren't guaranteed to you. We decided we wanted them, and so we just said, that's my right. But God didn't give you that right. And so God says, if I love you, I'm willing to admit my faults. I'm not going to demand that I never make any mistakes. I am not going to demand my rights. I'm not going to demand that when I come home every night, Sharon has to get down and kiss my ring and make sure all my clothes are all folded and washed. I mean, they usually are, but if they're not, I have no right to get mad about it and say, well, you have to have my laundry done and you have to have my dinner cooked. And, we get angry about these things. We get angry because our rights are being violated, and yet we made them up.
What does that say to me? It's your God-given right,
Well,
that just made up.
That didn't come out of the Bible, yeah.
People say.
Yeah, it's your God-given right to do so. No, it's not. If there is a right that God gave us, it was we accept him or reject him. That's the only. He doesn't force me to accept him. Other than that, I can't find a single right in Scripture that God says I have. I have responsibilities, but I don't have rights. All right. Love is not rude. If I love you, I am not going to be rude. What does the word rude mean? I mean,
Disrespectful.
disrespectful? Hateful?
Challenging?
Challenging?
Lack of regard for someone's feelings.
Lack of regard for somebody's feelings? The best practical definition I have ever found for rude is if I know something bothers you and I love you, what do?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. If I know that something I do bothers you, if I do it anyway, that's being rude. Now, let's say you got some old boy who grew up out in the farm and he had 14 brothers, and in his household, burping is considered to be normal. But he marries some delicate little flower from the city, and she grew up where burping was considered horrible. So what should he do? Stop burping. Now, in his house, it wasn't considered rude. Everybody did it. But she considers it rude. And if you love somebody, you're not going to do things you know they don't like. And so that's rudeness. All right, this next one is the number one problem in humanity. And in one sense, you could say every one of the rest of them come out of this one. What is self-seeking?
Just do it.
My way. This one is a problem for all of us. Why? We are born selfish. It's just part of our nature. It's what Paul calls the sinful nature. When they brought us home from the hospital, who did we care about? Did you care if your mother had to get up at 2 in the morning to feed you or change you or hold you? No. You wanted all the attention. Now that's okay for a baby. But as we grow older, we're supposed to get out of that. We're supposed to learn not to be selfish. What's the number one problem in marriage? Selfishness. I want my way. I want her to please me. I want to watch the programs I want to watch. I want to have the food I want to have. I want to live where I want to live. That's our nature. We want everybody else to please us. That's just, so we have to work on it. And God says, if I love you, I'm not going to be so self-seeking. I'm going to want to please you, not just myself. Now this next one, love is not easily angered. Why do we get angry easily? This is a study in human relationships. Why do we... Now, he's not talking about the anger that a person gets and then hangs on to it for weeks. That's not what he's talking about at all. That's a different kind of anger. He's talking about the quick anger, that we get mad about things. Why do we do that? It doesn't usually do a lot of good. Why do we do it? Why do we get mad at people? Driving down the street.
They're
We-
inconveniencing me.
Ma'am?
They're inconveniencing me.
Well, that's one one reason. But why do we do it? What's the goal?
I think it goes back to, we're talking about with the rights we gave ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
They're stepping on my rights.
Yeah, yeah,
How dare they?
yeah. We learn as children that if we get mad, what happens?
You get attention.
People give us what we want. And a lot of people grow up with this attitude, well, if I get mad, people will give in to me. And in marriage, particularly, we have found if we get mad about things, our spouses will give in to us just to keep the peace. What's the number one complaint teenagers have about their fathers? Number one.
Curfew.
Ma'am?
They yell at them.
They get mad. The number one complaint teenagers have about their fathers is they use anger to control. Why does a father get angry at his teenager? I mean, it may be deserved, but
Lots of reasons. Lots of valid reasons.
what do fathers learn?
They get angry.
If I get angry enough, people will give in to me. But what happens when you get your way by being angry?
People get scared of you, they don't want to be around.
Yeah, people get scared of you. They don't want to be around you. It's not the right way to build relationships. But it's so easy. Why do people pitch a fit in the store? You ever had anybody in front of you in the grocery store get mad and scream and yell at the girl checking them out? It's not her fault. She's not the one that priced that thing that way. We've learned that anger is a way to get what we want. And so a lot of us use anger. We get mad. We get upset. We pitch fits. We raise our voices. And a lot of times people will give in. As a parent, one of the first things I learned was that you had to stop the attitude. When my kids were little, I never let them pitch fits. Why?
Because they'll start walking out.
Because that's what they'll start doing to get their way. I learned very quickly when my kids would get angry or cry or I would say, okay, we don't want to hear that. Now, I didn't spank for that because I reserve spanking for certain criminal activities. I reserve spanking for lying to me, any form of dishonesty, things like that. But if they were just acting up, pitching a fit, I would say, okay, I don't want to hear that. You go into your room, and as soon as you're done, you can come back. It didn't take them long. There's no point in pitching a fit if nobody's watching you. But if you give in to a child pitching a fit, what happens? Oh, they'll just keep doing it. You can't let it, ma'am. It worked before, why not work again? Yeah. My parents never gave in to my little fits, and I've learned quickly. There's no point pitching a fit. And my children learn very quickly. They'll even to this day talk about whenever they got out of sorts, I would just say, please go to your room, and as soon as you want to, you can come back if you can behave. And boy, it didn't take them long at all. And God says, if I love you, I'm not going to use anger to get my way. But it's so easy to us because we've learned that if we get angry, people will give us our way. I mean, people will come in and they'll pitch fits, you know. People come into elders' meetings and pitch fits. People, you know. People on the roads will pitch fit, and people in grocery stores will pitch fits, and we've learned to get our way. And God says, if I love you, I'm not going to use anger to get my way. It's just not the way it's supposed to be done. All right, this next one's crucial. True love, if I love you, I will keep no record of wrongs. What does it mean to keep a record of wrongs?
You remember.
You remember 6 months ago when you did it. Why do we keep a record of wrongs?
Well, for your ammunition.
Ammunition, yeah. Yeah, if I get into a fuss with my wife, go back here into my trunk and I've got all this ammunition and I rummage around. Aha! You remember 3 months ago you did this. And so we keep a record of wrongs and we use it against people. Now, what's wrong with that?
There's no forgiveness.
There's no forgiveness. Do we want God using everything we've ever done as ammunition against us? No. And God says, if I'm not willing to forgive, then what?
You won't be forgiven.
He says, I will not forgive you. That's pretty serious. So we have to forgive. Now, when I'm marriage counseling, I use the garbage rule. I've had a lot of couples come back and say, you know, that's the best thing you taught us. How long can you keep garbage?
Needs to go out that day.
You don't want to keep garbage more than 3 days. Now, if you've got a problem with somebody, you may need to deal with it for 3 days. But at some point, what do?
Get rid of it.
get rid of it. You throw it out. You know, if a parent tells their child, well, you made this mistake 6 months ago, what are you telling them?
You just have to keep remembering your bad stuff.
I'm going to keep bringing it up. You'll never get over it. And that's a terrible thing to do to a child or to a spouse or to anybody else. If something has happened and it's in the past, let it go. Don't keep a record of wrongs. Yes, ma'am.
What's the difference between keeping a record of wrongs versus accountability? If someone says, hey, I've been struggling with this, well, you know they're in the wrong, and they know they're in the wrong. Wouldn't that be keeping a record, though, and remembering?
No, you have to deal with some things. But if a person has something they haven't dealt with, yeah, they need to deal with it. But that doesn't mean I keep bringing it up. You know, sometimes you might have to go to somebody and say, you've done this wrong, you need to deal with it. But that doesn't mean you keep bringing it up. If they don't deal with it, that's on them. But yeah, it's a tough one. I have literally had couples come into my office and their spouse did something 10 years earlier and they have not gotten over it. Yes. Oh, time. Oh, good night. Sorry, time's up. We'll pick up there next.